So, as always, welcome to Club Live. I hope you're all having a great week. It's not Friday, just to set the scene very early on. Usually, we are webinar Fridays, 10 a.m. This is a special Wednesday, 10 a.m. Webinar for you all today. So, as you all have done, thank you for saying hi in the comments so we know everything's working. If you've got any questions at any time throughout today's content, do let myself or Dan know in the comments, and I will stop Dan in his tracks and I'll ask him some questions. So please do, at any point, if you've got any questions, just fire them over to us and we'll get those answered. When you exit today's session, a feedback form will pop up. Please do leave us your thoughts. It's the only way that we get to improve and continue to deliver our content to you all. There is also a section on the feedback form where if you do require CPD for today's session, do let us know in the feedback form and we will get the certificates over to you, hopefully by the end of today. Joe, pleased to hear it's now clear. Very weird the way tech works sometimes. So look, let's just get straight into things. If the clicker decides to work, which it's not, which is always amazing. So look, behind the club is Amanda, Lewis, myself, and Jade, with a huge backing and the support of every single one of these incredible firms. It's great content delivered by some of our awesome collaboration partners. So just a big shout out and a thank you to everybody that now collaborates and supports our club members and the wider community itself. And I suppose what I mean by wider community, people need to talk and people need support. So we've got individual WhatsApp communities depending on the role that you play within your business. Whether you're an owner, an advisor, an ops manager, a power planner, mortgage advisor, or we've got certain study groups now as well. But if you're looking for a support network of like-minded individuals, do let us know in the feedback and we can put you into the relevant WhatsApp communities. I'd always say one thing: mute it, because sometimes it can get a little bit interesting, especially when there's budgets and everything else going on. The power planner group does absolutely go nuts, which is understandable. Our weekly club lives brings you insights from industry experts such as Dan from Timeline today. And our podcast is where you can hear stories from those who are running a financial planning business. The highs, the lows, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's a very raw podcast show that Lewis runs. So do have a listen to that. I think you can listen to that on your Spotify and your Apple podcast, wherever you typically go to for your podcast listening. It is just the Financial Planning Podcast. So do have a listen to that as well. What have we got coming up? Got a couple of really good webinars coming up. We are back this week on Friday. We are with Bear Rock, and we're going to explore how stronger case reviews reduce PI risk and strengthen your advice process. These are always very good, very intriguing webinars with Bear Rock all around PI. On the 12th of March, we are with FE Fund Info. We're going to look at how better data improves decisions, reduces risk, and saves time. That's something that we're all looking to do these days, is save a little bit of time. And back with Way Trustees on the 20th of March. These guys, we always tend to get hundreds of people sign up for Way Trustees webinars. The content that they deliver is outstanding. We're going to cover practical multi-trust strategies for effective IHT mitigation and getting trust structures right. I mean, that is a mouthful in itself. All three are practical CPD sessions with clear actionable takeaways. So do come along. Exactly how you've registered to this, you can register for all of our future webinars. And we have a massive library of what we've done previously and recorded, so you can revisit any of the webinars that we've done over the course of the last 2 years as well. So please feel free to dive into the archive, as they say. So as I've addressed the issue, this is not Kate, this is Dan, and it's not an issue. That Kate's been pulled somewhere else. Dan's filled in nicely for her. So I'm really pleased to introduce Dan Smith, Business Development Manager at Timeline. So Dan, you joined financial services in 2019, since worked across advisor support and key account roles. You've got your level 4 diploma along the way as well. You're now working with advisors at Timeline to help them implement evidence-based portfolios that reduce risk, lower costs, and improve retirement outcomes. Is that you, Dan, or is that a bio for somebody completely different?
Well, that sounds about right, I'd say, Lee. But yeah, not too much differentiation from there. Exactly that. And obviously, people who might be familiar with Timeline already, not just the MPS, obviously the financial planning software and the tech stack that kind of sits alongside that and supports the whole thing. Which, yeah, can't wait to show you a bit more of today.
Amazing. As everybody knows, we like to give back. Everyone that registered for today's webinar answered a couple of questions for us. We've got a good mix of IFAs, planners, and I know we've got some power planners in today's attendance as well. Main friction points that we're seeing right now is onboarding and client reviews. Seems to be a bit of a friction point, and compliance is coming in pretty close behind. The majority of attendees, their books are still under 25% multi-generational. So there's clearly an opportunity within the industry to look at tech and how we can engage sort of different generations as well. Dan, how are you seeing the industry at the moment, especially around the multi-generational piece as well? I know the club do a lot of events face-to-face about engaging the different generations, but how are firms using tech to bridge that gap, would you say?
Well, in our experience, yeah, very heavily. I mean, and I think reflective of that is the exponential growth we've seen really since launching the MPS, to market in 2020. I mean, we're now the third largest in the UK, managing about 13 billion. And obviously, a lot of what you said is the reason for that. It's the low cost, evidence-based philosophy, sort of mitigating that risk there. But also, I think that big leverage for that is also the tech and the enhancements and the efficiencies. I think you've hit the nail on the head for something you said earlier. It's almost about giving back time, and what advisors then choose to do that time, whether that's to, invest, sort of free up their time to have more client conversations, try and onboard more clients, keep things going. It's all to the betterment. So if we can nail a piece of inefficiency, if you're using multiple systems that don't talk to each other, for example, if you can nail that piece, it's a solid foundation for the future. So yeah, we hear similar pain points as what you've just highlighted, really.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I'm going to kick things off today with a poll straight off the bat, really about which of these goals is most important for your firm right now. So when you look at yourself or your firm or the book that you're looking after, what is most important to you? Are you looking to reduce your admin time? Are you looking to attract a different generation? Strengthening consumer duty compliance, scaling without adding headcount? That's always a firm favorite amongst the audience. Everybody wants to scale without physically increasing or adding headcount. There are multiple ways that you can absolutely do so. Increasing client lifetime value. Where, in your opinion, Dan, what are you seeing at the moment? Where would you cast your vote at the moment that other firms are seeing and feeling?
Do you know what? It's interesting as we still see them trickling in. It is so reflective. This is just a microcosm, I think, of what we tend to hear from most, independent firms, I think, around the country. So yeah, I think reducing the admin time, it's the one thing you'd love to bottle it. Like I say, the one thing we all want more of, and the one thing we can't harness in any way is time, isn't it? So yeah, no surprise to see that one. I think scaling without adding headcount is the win-win dream, isn't it? So that'd always be great to do it. But again, with one eye on the intergenerational wealth transfer, it's interesting, in my opinion, with that, because it's such a big topic, isn't it, for the future, that maybe that, attracting younger clients is not maybe higher, but perhaps that's a byproduct, really, of the other things, nailing those things first, and then that comes as a secondary motion.
And look, reducing admin time doesn't necessarily mean you have to increase headcount, right? I mean, I know a lot of people that start getting bogged down with some admin think, let's bring on, a client support administrator to bridge that gap and take a workload off of certain people within the organization. But I think tech plays a massive part of what we do now. It's evolving, which seems like all the time at the moment, which is amazing. It's a really big driving factor within our profession at the moment to really streamline that tech, get things talking, and ultimately minimizes risk in itself. It's less human error if tech's integrated and working to the best it can be. So, Dan, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll enable you to fully take over. The floor is yours, but I know you're going to give us a good insight as to tech stacks and what they should be doing and can be doing moving forward. So again,
Certainly.
just want to say any questions as you're going along, just fire them into the chat, and Dan will do his best to answer them.
Absolutely will do. And yeah, morning everybody as well. So hopefully we'll kick straight off. But what I was keen to kind of show you today is almost how we can sort of use that our tech offering and our integrated ecosystem to potentially, nail a lot of those inefficiencies and sort of use that to its fullest potential. So what I'll do is a bit of a tour through our ecosystem really. And if I kind of start off initially by outlining what is our mission really statement at Timeline, it is simple. It's twofold. The first thing is to help millions of people retire with confidence by building an ecosystem that gives and empowers advisors to answer that most important question that clients have. Will I have enough money in retirement? Will I be all right in the end? And we want that to be a resounding yes. Now, as I say, the twofold part of that is obviously again equipping you with the tools to be able to do that as well and answer that question as a resounding yes. So we believe that you shouldn't be paying for technology that doesn't talk to one another. You might be keying information across multiple systems that aren't integrated. So what we're trying to do is kind of bridge that gap to a degree by providing you with the tech to remove the heavy lifting, underpin a client's financial planning journey. It allows you to build and stress test client plans, basically. So I think what we're going to focus on today is a bit of a walkthrough of a client that we've kind of built to show the full extent of the capability of our system. So you could theoretically go all the way from the onboarding, from a discovery fact find of a client all the way up to kind of implementation. And then something else we've added to our bow as of last year, a platform as well. So ISAs, JISAs, SIPs, GIAs, etc. in terms of products availability. So I think the big thing, and one of the topics that obviously, we're focusing on there today, it is about that sort of integration piece as well. Now, the first thing I will kind of show is at the minute is our control center, so the Timeline app, and essentially it's a one-stop shop for using us in any form, whether that's getting information about our portfolios, which you'd find via the models tab there if you're using our MPS. We'll come on to obviously resources and some of the analytics and the research, because it's a whole of market analytics tool that we've recently revamped as well. But also when it comes to the financial planning software, it tends to kind of sit through this client's tab there. But a step beyond, before that, I think integration is a particular pain point for firms from what we hear when it comes to back office providers. Now, we totally hear that. So something that we're doing a lot of work at the moment behind the scenes, our development team, to nail the amount of integrations we've got with various back office systems. So IntelliFlow being a key one. I'm sure there's going to be some IO users on the call. We're currently in a situation where we've been able to date to get one-way integration with IntelliFlow, where we pull information from outset, from the back office system, client and plan info. But the bugbear has always been trying to feed that information back. And sometimes you battle against obviously third-party API streams, which if anyone who's a bit more technically and digitally minded will probably appreciate the pain points sometimes we're dealing with those. But we've pretty much nailed that one now. And we're soon going to be rolling out a situation where we can feed any information that gets updated within the Timeline ecosystem back into IO. So it's a complete, scissor motion, two-way integration, as fluid as you like. We're soon going to have Planner coming on board as well. So we're going to be launching a similar thing. So if, for example, you're a user of either of those back office systems, you can nail that efficiency piece straight away on day one by en masse bringing everything into our system and then feeding it back in there for any changes that get made. So in terms of what we're going to run through today, and I'll locate the dummy client that we've kind of built, specifically to run through these types of demo examples, really. It's no relation, but it is good old John Smith. We always make a little joke of this as well about the fact that do not edit in there, because we've made this one tailored specifically for this purpose. We might as well put that in neon lettering. We do not want people going in there going rogue and making any amendments necessarily. But as you'll see here, we've clicked into the client, and this is almost a bit of a sum of its parts, really, in terms of the breakdown of the advisor to software. So rattling through what we're going to cover off, we're going to begin the onboarding journey with John today by sending him a fact find to gather his detailed financial information, include any financial goals he might have. We'll send a risk profile questionnaire to determine his risk tolerance and capacity for loss, and then match him with an appropriate investment strategy from there. And then via the Letters of Authority tool, we'll request access to John's existing investment and pension accounts in order to get the most recent valuation and holdings data. Then we'll look into the financial plan, so the cash flow modelling, to understand current sustainability of the financial plan for John to not run out of money. We'll look to make changes to the current investments, contributions and withdrawal strategy in order to then potentially create a more sustainable financial plan, as well as then including any financial goals as set out in John's fact find. So final thing we'll then touch on is to sort of create a switch report to send to John in terms of proceeding with the recommendation. And then we'll look to invest the assets into timeline portfolios via our platform. And the purpose of this is just to show exactly how integrated and seamless the whole kind of every step of the journey can be. So, what I do want to emphasize before we kind of rock and roll and get really stuck into it is each of the tools you're about to see can be used independently of one another. Clearly, though, when used together, they harness a massive amount of efficiency and sort of power by, as much as anything, pre-populating data across the whole system that then is going to pull through to other areas, as you'll soon see. For example, the information from the fact find will seamlessly populate the financial plan, the LOA, the platform, and everything in between, and it completely eliminates the need for repetitive data entry from your side. So, in order to kind of get cracking with this, if we were to send out a fact find to the client, you click into the manage fact find option. Now, one thing you will notice across our system with this is this kind of how it works or explanation button. If you ever see that, you can click into it. It's almost an ongoing FAQ or live support section where you can go in, find out a little bit more. Sometimes there's explainer videos and demos from our head of development team, who can essentially go through it and explain in a bit more detail, how to best get the use out of the tool that you're using. But the way that we tend to work with our fact finds and across our system with the planning tech is customizable templates. And the reason for that is because then you can tailor the data collection for whatever the different client stage of the journey is. And the reason we say that is, for example, a discovery fact find is going to be slightly different to maybe an annual review template, which you can build out, and they're going to look slightly differently. So, clearly with a discovery fact find, if we were to go in there, the objective of that one is to obviously get a full overview of the client's profile, current lifestyle, so everything from date of birth, nationality, marital status, all the way through to income sources, investment, pension, spending, etc. Holistic data gathering, potentially a different template there that you can build out at outset with different set of questions, maybe more detailed about their health, financial goals, income sources, protection needs, estate planning, etc. And then annual review, to ask those unnecessary questions again, like asking their date of birth. Well, that's already been answered. That's not going to change. So we can remove that entirely and kind of build out a template specifically for that need. So once we kind of come into the templates tab, absolute easy as you like to kind of build out a new template. And if I kind of just give you a little bit of a steer here on 14 sections in total on the left-hand side, but you notice here you can add in your own bespoke sections. So if you've got something that you always want to include as part of a fact find or want to customize that, you can absolutely do so. And as you can see here, you can toggle on, toggle off specific sections, specific question sets, so you can kind of lose those all together and tailor that to your liking, save it as a template, and then you could almost have, 3 or 4 different versions of different types of templates depending on the type of fact find you send in. You can reorder the steps as well, so if you wish to do that, you can. But as much as anything, trying to fully kind of put you in control of driving the vehicle, essentially. So if we kind of go into the start fact find button, imagining this was a completely new one, to send out for a client, the 3 options, broadly speaking, really are to send it very much with one eye on that digital first approach, perhaps more for the more tech savvy clients there. Send it as a standard template. You've got the option here. This will essentially go over to them via email, sort of bump into their inbox. They'll get a call to action to follow a link, and then essentially they complete that, and it bounces back onto the system at the point they do so. But this is the first interesting thing we see when we go this route. Would you like to use smart pre-fill with existing data and feeding very much into that point of integrating and importing client data in at outset? If you've got that there, this suddenly, for perhaps annual review ones, if it's not, first time you're getting the information from a client, it can pull through anything that's already held within the system. So it can save you a massive amount of admin time. AI, you might have heard of it here and there recently. Obviously, we're trying to harness the power of that. Something that's been quite new to us is obviously enabling follow-up questions. This is something that's just going to develop and get slicker as we go along. But it can really sort of cut out some of the admin time and the follow-up pain points there from your side. Equally, if you're not that comfortable with it at outset, not a problem. You can toggle it off. But if we were to go through the motions of carrying on here, we've obviously got the client. There's some suggested wording for the email subject line to pop that across. We hit that send fact find button, and there it goes. Off it is, essentially. Now, when we back up, as you can see, that's straight away populated into the system to say this one is kind of in train, so to speak. It's waiting to be completed by the client. So that's one way of sending it out to the client directly. Now, best laid plans and all that. What if it ends up in the junk folder or spam folder? The client says, I've not received it. Not a problem. What you can do is kind of catch that, generate that as a link to send it to the client, in an email that you'll send in separately, as a follow-up or an alternative method. Just going to do a little bit of tidying up here, actually, because otherwise I'm going to end up with absolutely reams of these coming down the page. But the third option to do that is obviously if you've got the client who's in the office there with you, you can fill it in with them. And this is a great advert for this because it's the old Blue Peter scenario. Here's one we made earlier with this client. So where we've already captured the information for this dummy client, as you can see, it's already popping through and pulling through the info for the fact find they've completed already and what the system already holds. So that's, once you hit save and finish, you can do that and it's there, save. You can pull that from the system and you've got yourself a completed fact find, essentially. So once we've kind of got that one nailed, we then need to try and get the attitude to risk questionnaire and a risk profile obviously sent for the client. So assessing a client's risk tolerance and capacity for loss is a regulatory requirement. So, crucial for delivering optimal client outcomes. Many existing risk profiling tools do lack robust foundations and often ask leading questions and maybe conflate volatility with risk in our observations. So here at Timeline, what we're trying to do is develop a more rigorous approach to risk profiling based on the extensive academic research and the modelling that we're privy to in line with our evidence-based philosophy. And what that basically means is 120 odd years plus of market data and peer-reviewed academic research about the market. So we're very much trying to sort of leverage that. Much the same as before, you've broadly speaking got the three options to send the risk questionnaire to the client via email. They'll get the alert come through to obviously complete that. You can generate the link or you can fill it in obviously with the client there as well. So once that it's been completed, obviously this is where it will sit. The status for this one obviously is showing as complete. So if we click into that, the first thing you'll come back is once it's been completed, as it will give you the kind of risk score. And we, different providers do this on different metrics, don't they? We do very much adopt that 1 to 10 kind of risk scale. But what we do like to do is call me cynical, but I think that, boiling something as complex as the risk discussion down to a single number is perhaps a little bit flawed. So in that sense, what we do like to do is kind of explain what this actually means for the client and try to put it in plain English. What does a 7 out of 10 in the risk score mean? So we very much kind of define that through the system there. Wherever possible, just kind of prompting you to have that further conversation with the client. And if you click into the Learn More section, it will break down kind of what that means from a volatility risk point of view, but also the returns risk and what that could look like over various different time periods as well. So if we kind of take a little look at it's three sections, broadly speaking, that consists of our attitude to risk questionnaire, previous investing experience, so a bit of a handle on, what have they tended to do in that area within investing before. A little piece on their investing knowledge. And the third section there would be the attitude to investing. And in this section, it's very much more that kind of hypothetical scenario-based questions of, in this scenario, in this situation, what would you do out of these four options? That's what I was looking for. And an interesting point with this is if ever you just kind of see, it's a neat little feature actually, that it will flag up any kind of inconsistent answers that a client might give. So say you've got someone who's kind of ticking along as maybe a 4 out of 10 on the risk spectrum, and then they give this really kind of aggressive maverick answer for a question, which was sort of far more associated with an aggressive risk score, it will flag it up on the system for you. So what you can do is, again, it's to prompt that wider conversation with the client around it. And if you see fit to do so off the back of that conversation, what you can do is go in, and you might have spotted it already, the option to override risk score. So if you give that one a click, you can pop that in and say, would you know what, after discussion, I think you're probably more in line with a 5. versus a 7, for example, you can pop in the justification for that, hit save changes. That will stay on the record for this one, and it will pull through to any kind of recommendation or report that you sort of generate off the system as well. So obviously, for the purposes of this one, we've got the risk attributes of risk. We've got a risk score for the client. We obviously now know their fact finds, so their sort of information. So the next thing we need to do is get up to date plan information. Now, this has been quite a new feature that we added last year to our tech stack. And it's to try and do something to nail arguably the worst process in financial services, which is letters of authority. And Lee, I can see you nodding your head. I dare say if a few people were on camera here, they'd probably be doing the same as well. But someone's got to do something about it. And what we've done is try to sort of integrate with Pension Lab, who are, tech junkies, essentially real data giants, but to try and automate and streamline the LOA process to try and make onboarding more efficient and error-free. Now, what I will say is it's not a silver bullet, because ultimately you're only as good as what the other providers' requirements are and what they can accept. But thanks to the expertise of Pension Labs, really, and the volume of the LOAs they handle, the time to complete the LOA process is significantly shortened and enhanced by making it digital. I think what the Origo straight through processing transfer service has done for straightforward kind of ISA transfers, when they can go through seamlessly, good Lord, can they make a serious, a difference there and be, from an efficiency point of view. So LOAs are sent and chased on your behalf. So we take on all of the pain points for that. We've got full coverage of providers, and admin is reduced by roughly 80%. And I'll walk you through sort of how we use the tool. But the success rate has been pretty good so far. We've sent thousands of LOAs all out. And I think we're upwards again of about an 80% success rate across the board at the minute. I think the answer, it would probably be higher than that, if not. The minority that aren't, getting kind of put straight through are usually due to a mismatch in client data between what's inputted on our system and held by the other, by the scheme. So it's not, it's not the silver bullet, as I say, but it's certainly something that's for providers that can support it is going to make a massive difference. And with that in mind, we'll just click into, because in terms of the step-by-step guide, really quite informative about how it works, which I will walk through shortly with you. But there's a particular thing which always kind of blows my mind slightly, and it's the power of Pension Labs tech. They automatically generate the LOA based on the specific provider's requirements. So, for example, if you've got a provider that will specifically say we need it in this format and it needs to include this data, they will be in tune with that and absolutely produce it to that liking. Now, if we kind of take a step back on this as well, I mentioned about this, obviously, the supported providers who can do this and who can't. We've kind of got an ever-evolving list of providers that absolutely can support it and that prosper. Pretty exhaustive list as I flick through. And also, conversely, we do have, once we get that, a list, obviously, of providers that can't support it, or at least their success rate is lower than 50% as well. But if we kind of go back and walk through the process of doing it, as before, in terms of pulling through client information that's held on the system already, this clearly is going to be firm information for your business. So assuming that's been entered at outset, in turn, just like client data, that's going to pull through to this section of the site. So you won't need to, kind of rekey that at all. Client information is pulled through to this area as well, because it's been inputted and captured on the system elsewhere previously. But then if you did wish to request extra information from the provider that doesn't form part of the standard LOA pack, then you can absolutely do so here. This can be used for either transfer of servicing rights or for information only. And in terms of the provider list, you can include multiple providers or multiple policies within the same request. If you don't know the policy number, not a problem. Any provider, as long as you've inputted the information you have here for the client, they should be able to marry that up and provide it. But it's interesting. Aviva is always my go-to for whatever reason, probably something Freudian in that, because it's an interesting case study for one that, as the second notice tells you, over 80% of digital LOAs to this provider succeed, and it's a very good scheme for it. However, isn't there always an asterisk? With certain plan numbers and product types, it might be something where you have to go the manual process, so you'd have to go offline. Goes back to my point, certainly not a silver bullet at all, but some of the feedback we get has been tremendous, really, in terms of nailing that inefficiency and really streamlining this quite painful process for all concerned, it's fair to say. And I mentioned you can add multiple providers within it. Once you hit that center client for signature, much like other aspects of our site, it will very much go via email. They'll get a prompt to pop a DocuSign on it. Once they've done that, it bumps back onto the system and off it goes to the provider, essentially. And if we click into this one, which is obviously already in train, I say in train for a dummy client that doesn't exist in a plan that doesn't exist, so it's never going to move on. But it will kind of give you a tracker status of where we are at that point in time with it. So clearly this one's been signed by the client, and off it goes to the provider. What it will also give you is kind of data-led insights towards the estimated completion date based on the average time the provider takes to complete it. So that's an ever-evolving picture, as we go on a more kind of data from the average turnaround scheme by scheme. And what we'll do is kind of chase it 3 times on an automated basis. If we get to the end of that one and there's no response or it's been rejected, it kind of goes back and would have to be done as a new request. So to recap kind of where we'd be with this client at this point, we've completed the fact find, so we know his current investments and financial goals. We've got the attitude to risk, we've got a risk score. And via the LOA tool, we've received details of John's current investments and pension, giving us the latest holdings and valuation data. So now what we want to do is assess the current financial plan. And to answer that question really is, am I going to be all right in the end? Am I going to have enough money to retire on? So and making any necessary adjustments we need to do as we go along for the plan. So I think what I'll just do initially is go back into the financial plan, which is where our cash flow modeling software is. But to kind of give you a little bit of context and background on our thinking, this is very much, you might be aware of our CEO, Abraham Okasanya, timeline, quite prominent in the industry, and very much unashamedly looking to disrupt the market and the existing order when it came to cash flow planning, and very much challenging that assumed 4% withdrawal rule, even wrote a book on it. So in line with that, again, it was very much kind of what we were keen to do is separate away from a lot of other cash flow modeling tools on the market, which basically asked for an inflation rate of say 2% assumed, and market returns of say 7%, which gives you a fairly rigid 5% assumed, combined straight line projection. We know life isn't like that. Life doesn't follow straight lines, So what we wanted to do is build something fully stochastic that's really stress tested against real world, real market returns and situations that will go up and down through the years. Now, again, in that kind of Blue Peter analogy, one we built earlier, I'm not going to kind of go through copious screens of how we would set up a new plan and implement that, because it probably wouldn't be the best use of your time to see it. But what I will do is kind of walk you through how you would do so, and again, to show off the fact that all this information has pulled through already, because we've already captured it via the fact find. So what you could probably do, and we actually put this to the test once, is boil the kettle, whip through and see if you can actually put the financial plan forward by the time it boils, and pour yourself a brew. You absolutely can. It's the spoiler. So if we kind of go through these screens here, but then if at this stage again you realise, oh, actually I've not included something, a plan, or we need to update the values or something, not a problem. You can go in there and absolutely do that before running off the plan. But if we kind of assumed we've completed those screens and then go back through, the first thing you're going to see when you've run off a plan, essentially, for a client, is this overview screen. And the first thing it will give you is kind of a sustainability score. Now, if we click into show details, as it says there in kind of like the subheads text, this plan is only going to survive 40% of scenarios, and it will tell you on how many scenarios that's based on. Now, you'll notice there across 111 years of history, we essentially have got stress testing going all the way back from January 1915 all the way up to the present, and all of those 876 scenarios are comprised from that point. Now, for this dummy client, it was a 36-year plan. So clearly it's the 36-year plan, the first one running modelling example from January 1915, then the second one from February 1915 all the way up to present on a 36-year basis. So what this is telling us really is, looking at this continuum down here, only on 348 of those scenarios did the plan reach the end and the client make it to the end, essentially with the money. Clearly on this one, work to be done from a sustainability point of view. But what it will also kind of tell you and break down is some of what the worst case scenario would have been, what the median scenario would have been, and the best case. as we scroll down the page a little bit more, just to kind of give you confidence in the risk factors that are being tested against, it's things like major wars, pandemics, periods of hyperinflation, and many other world events, which we're updating on the system annually. So a good example of that would be, in recency, the COVID pandemic, obviously of a few years ago, the Trump tariffs even last year caused a short-term market reversal in Q1, you may remember. So things like that have been kind of factored in to the modeling. And as we scroll down the page, this is very much your high level view. So you can toggle it between worst case, pessimistic, median, and optimistic scenario. And if we focus on median, the intention of this plan was for the client to make it to year 98 for the plan to take here. So clearly for this one, this is telling us again, in the median example, it's going to fall short of that. And it will also kind of show you the cash flow balance as well. Now, there's two views you can do for that. Basic, which kind of gives you the high level yearly income, withdrawals, any contributions, and what the total need for the yearly spend is for the client. And as we can see here in the median scenario, this is the time when we enter a negative cash flow balance. We can also toggle that to in-depth. And with one eye on things like with a specific withdrawal strategy, you can kind of specify exactly where the funds are coming from per part or where the contributions are deriving from. So it kind of just fleshes that out a little bit more and goes in depth. As we scroll down, this is kind of what the general spending we've entered is to be, so 60k a year from the year 2025 onwards. And any specific goals that have been implemented will be sat here as well. That can be something like, wanting to sort of tuition fees for the grandkids, or all the way through to wanting to spend a holiday, to the tune of £3,000 a year, for example, for the next 5 years. Any contributions, income will be in here. Breakdown of any kind of reports and portfolios. And this can be pulled from the system at outset here and obviously popped into a report. So if I scroll back up to the top and we ever want to make any changes to this and check any details that have been popped in, you can go into the settings tab, and this is where you can click in, essentially see any details, make any amendments to any specific pots, etc. that they've got, update fees, etc. as you go along. So this is where you're going to kind of do that, add any other liquid assets or non-liquid assets in as well. So if they've kind of deriving rental income from a property, for example, then you can pop that in there. And much the same with obviously income sources, spending, any contributions and transfers, withdrawal schedule, and also the client details and plan details as well. So you can pop in and specify there, you can do this as joint plans for a household, for husband and wife as well, good health, poor health, or average health, etc. And again, one of the perks really, I suppose, within our cash flow software is we are testing against real world, real market data. But hey, there is always the option to turn that off and toggle it off. If you want to do it just as Monte Carlo scenarios, you can absolutely do that too. And you can also set things like inflation and withdrawal rules. And here's a reminder, it's sort of UK, and I don't know if we've got anyone north of the border, obviously on the call here today, but a nice USP for us is the fact that we do boast the Scottish tax rates as well, so you can include that within your planning. But if we focus into the charts and tools, this is just kind of to flesh out and encourage that wider conversation with a client about the output of obviously their plan. And the first thing we're going to look at here is charts and tools. Now, not to scare the living daylights out of everyone, but the first thing I do like to do is I appreciate it's a very busy tab, but this chart here is what you're looking at here, this kind of spaghetti junction. If we hover over and interrogate it, is all of those individual plans that we're testing again. So all of the modeling examples from 1915, here you are. So just again, to give you confidence in the level of stress testing that's being done. And what you can do through this chart is look at the median scenario, best case, worst case, and see where that plots. Clearly, there's going to be a massive divergence there between best case, worst case, and median. But then if you wanted to kind of look within the realms of what's most likely to happen, you can kind of put those hover guardrails in place as well to see, this is likely it could be within this threshold, essentially. So that's kind of your balance report, which tells you, relative to John's age, what the balance of their plan is going to be. So longevity is something that I know was very much at the forefront, from a compliance point of view, with the FCA. They highlighted, I think, in their retirement income review recently, perhaps cash flow modelling, people looking past the sequencing risk and maybe the risk of running out of money, that mortality risk piece as well. Well, that's front and centre of what we've kind of logged into our cash flow planning. To give you that combined risk really of not just running out of money, but what are the chance, as per Office of National Statistics, of you even being alive when that happens, to kind of give you that combined risk of running out of money, but also being alive when that happens as well. So probably not necessarily the nicest topic of conversation, a bit morbid obviously for a Wednesday morning, but yeah, a necessary one to have clearly with the client. Sustainable spending. So yes, that is very much that kind of age-old, how much can I actually spend on a yearly basis before I'm running out of money question that many clients I'm sure will have had for you at times. And, risk of sound a bit like a politician's answer. The answer is it depends on the scenario. So as you'll see here, the kind of limbo measuring stick in the middle is the 60k need. And what you see in either side of that, if we highlight the green mark there, it's showing in your best scenario, which would have been between January 75 and January 2011. The most you could have spent actually was 111k, so almost double, what the actual need for spend is. In your worst case scenario, it would have been, almost a quarter of that figure, so 37.5 in the worst case scenario. So again, it's all very much to kind of look at depending on the scenario, depending on when you would have retired, it's a very wide ranging scale essentially. And if we go into cash flow, which we've seen already, this is just another area to kind of see the cash flow report for the plan. Now, other kind of little features to touch on before we go into, obviously, changes needed to be made. How do we make those changes? How do we run an updated plan on through the system? We've got your tax summary, tax overview, and the breakdown of things like that included. IHT planner, which is fairly kind of basic, but does what it needs to do in terms of assessing single and couple allowances, assessing any CLTs, etc., PETs, with one eye on IHT essentially, and any kind of liabilities there. Now, clearly, what we want to do with this one is make a few changes to it. So we need to make adjustments to try and up that sustainability and bring it, that score up a little bit more now. The best way of doing that is if you go into compare plans. This is kind of, again, ones we've created already to sort of up the sustainability. And at the point when you've done that, in fact, I've skipped ahead slightly there, because actually, how would you kind of go and come up with a new plan? Well, what you want to try and do really is avoid making edits off the original one. So the best port of call originally is to duplicate the plan, the original one that you put in, because that way it kind of keeps the original one sacrosanct. And then edits you make off of this is essentially a clone of that. Now, say we've gone through, we've made some amendments, we made some adjustments. I will kind of rattle through what those tended to be shortly in a minute for the purposes of this exercise. But here is the new optimized plan. And if you click into compare plans, you've got the one on the left-hand side there, but also the one that we've amended and we've made the changes on. Clearly, you can see there's a greater sustainability score for that one. And what you can do is kind of go through and see what changes have been made. Now, without getting too bogged down in the details for this client, we identified surplus. So there was pension contributions now being made where there was none before. Likewise, ISA contributions. One of their goals, I think I mentioned it already, actually, about holidaying to the tune of £2,000 a year for about a sort of 5-6 year period. That's been factored in, and a slightly earlier retirement date. And the way we've achieved it really is several fold, but the main thing is to kind of bring their top level allocation in line with the fact that they were a 7 out of 10. You might remember in terms of their risk score, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed on previous screens, they were kind of around about the 48-50% mark when it comes to equity exposure. So we've upped that. There is absolutely no obligation within our planning tech to recommend into timeline portfolios. In news that's going to shock no one on this call, we have picked timeline portfolios to invest into to optimize this. But also, above and beyond that, what we want to implement as well is a tax efficient account withdrawal strategy to sort of optimize that. In making those amendments, clearly we've raised this one up to from a point of being 40%, it's going to fail in more scenarios, up to a healthier 76%. And from a personal point of view, it really annoys me it's now 76% because it used to be about 82. But yeah, we just need to update a few changes this side. It's always so much stronger, I feel like, when it actually comes up saying sustainable rather than less sustainable. But there you go. So, at that stage, a client says that, brilliant, I think you've earned your money as the advisor at that point. It's a great recommendation and a massive improvement. Where do I sign? Well, we've got you back on that one as well. And we've got a modular reporting suite. And again, much the same as every other aspect of our site, really. This is fully customizable. You can amend these templates to your liking. And one of those things, but I mean, there is fairly no limit really to what you can produce in terms of the reports and things that you can kind of produce on the system. Cost and charges statements, there's a lot of different things on there, annual review letters, obviously the actual kind of cash flow reports, etc., but also a compliance switch report. And if I kind of show you how you would do that, the first, again, this is fully amendable, so you can kind of add in your own sections, takes anything out that you don't want there to be in there. But rattling through what that looks like, the full kind of unfiltered, unfettered switch report. Reasons to switch summary at the first, a little bit about investment philosophy, so active versus passive. In that sense, the importance of staying within a risk tolerance and a word on rebalance approaches. And then it will also compare against what they're currently invested into versus what you're recommending per plan. So if you've got a client in this scenario, for example, who had an ISA and a SIP, and you're recommending for them to switch out of both, obviously to make amendments to both, this will be on the same report, or you can specify them to be individual accounts. But as we go through, not only is it going to give you kind of the performance numbers as well as the visual graphic there, but also the geographical breakdown, the costs and charges, current investments versus what you're recommending, things like sector breakdown, asset allocation, the underlying holdings, and as we go down to the bottom, there's your legal and signatures on there. So as before, what you can do is the options are to either kind of send that to the client digitally for them to pop a DocuSign on it, electronic signature, or you can pull it off from the system there and then print it off, get them to sign it, and there it is. It's compliant and in the file for future reference for the client. So as you can see, within this journey so far, everything from the onboarding of a client all the way through to the switch recommendation, we've kind of got provision for that, and it's completely joined up within the same ecosystem. Now, the last thing to kind of show you really is something that we also launched last year, which is a fully fledged platform, which kind of sits alongside this as well. So this is just an extension really of the same ecosystem. You don't need to move to a different area of the site or a new login to obviously get clients onto platform. And again, the onboarding journey can be an absolute breeze, especially if by this point we've captured a lot of the information that we need, obviously, and we have done obviously by this time for the client. So what you'll notice here is produce platform cost illustrations. Now that's going to be if you've not added a client to the platform already, that's the first thing you're going to see. So you can go through that, and I'm going to work backwards slightly on this one because and in the interest of time and relevancy there, if we kind of go backwards, this is the information we're going to ask for. But as you'll see, it's already pulled through because we already hold it for the client. Moved away from John Smith here. I've gone for Bob Bobbins, but I won't tell John. We've cheated on him slightly there. But you can kind of go through there and pop on account level fees. And you can set up both bespoke fees as well, client level fees, whether that's fixed fee or percentage, monetary figure as well, we can offer. You can illustrate for flex accounts. So the way it kind of works within any of our wrappers is the ISA, for example, will have the investment side of things, which will be kind of like either one of our MPS portfolios. But also sitting alongside that within that same ISA wrapper is a flex account, which is for costs, for cash, and any loose assets in there as well. But as we sit here today, we're not fully whole of market on the MPS side of things, but we do have, pretty much every multi-asset fund you can think of. In addition to that, obviously, our MPS is on there, and we do plan to onboard third-party providers as well as we go along. But as you can see here, it's a one and done really for a lot of things like your contributions, whether that's one-offs or kind of regulars. You can get that popped in at outset. Any transfers, obviously, to be brought across, whether that's a re-registration or a cash transfer. This is where you can kind of select which option it is you're investing into, and you can add various wrappers here as well. And as we go back to the very beginning, again, this is the first thing that we would have inputted, which would have pulled through from the system if we've already got information for the client. with one eye on that intergenerational wealth transfer, we do offer household linking as well. So not just spousal, but also for the children. And the pricing schedule for our platform is 0.15% up to 500k of combined household assets, and all the way down to 0.06% for everything over 500k. So pretty aggressive on the pricing. And that's essentially it. So if we were to kind of go through, slightly ironically, just going to have to take a step back to then take a step forward on this one. Apologies, got rid of the wrong tab there. But if we were to obviously go then into it, we've got the illustrations there for what we're obviously recommending the client goes on to. If we go on to onboarding, it will ask you for bank details. Obviously, good practice to get those out at outset. Hit save changes. This is the drum roll moment. Leave it with us. Now, 9 times out of 10, very digital first with our platform, you're going to see AML checks and KYC checks completed successfully, and you're absolutely good to go. If there is, every now and again, you might see there might be something we need to query from our side, and we'll be in touch around that if we ever need to do so. So I think the last thing I was keen to kind of round off with today, and I mentioned the analytics tool, and this is something that we've recently enhanced and developed, and again, kind of comes as part of the package with the financial planning tech, and it's a fully whole of market tool, and we're very much trying to rival the kind of level of insight and granularity you can get from FE Analytics, for example. Internal model is going to be one of our multi-asset solutions here at the top, or one of our MPS portfolios that you can pop in, which I will do just for the purposes of this demo. But as you can notice here from as well, you can build out custom portfolios. So if you inherit a client who's perhaps got this weird and wonderful collection of instruments from an unmanaged model, you can build that out at outset as a means to an end to then run off the analytics, recommending an alternative for them to go into, and you can parlay that as a drag and drop into the switch report that we sort of ran through previously. And you can also include external model providers in that, as well as a whole host of multi-asset funds. So if we kind of click into multi-asset funds, for example, have something that's everyone on the call here is going to be aware of, I'm sure. And then we'll throw in a external MPS provider as well. As you'll see, as I route through the list there, it's pretty exhaustive from an alphabetical point of view. We'll go for, again, a fairly common one that we're fairly sort of aware of from our side as well. And if we hit analyze, this is the level of data that you're going to get, and it's another one of the benefits, really. It's third-party independent data, and as you can see, we're fetching that from Morningstar, and it's their daily feed essentially that we're pulling this information from. And as and when it does kind of load, as you'll see, the level of granularity and the detail we get through the system is going to be things like your cost, your performance, but also the geographical breakdown, etc. There we go. That actually took a little bit longer. I was starting to get a bit panicky there, Lee. It might fail on me, but there we go. It came good in the end.
It's always the way, isn't it?
Always is the way. But just quickly to sort of round off on this one and the level of detail you can get. So from a cost point of view, it's going to give you that insight. You can fully amend the date range of the performance chart there to kind of bring it in line. Pleased to say, hovering over this one and interrogating it, our tracker 60 comes out top of the tree there. But again, fully whole of market tool. If ever you see a situation where no data has been provided, that's just due to the provider having not supplied that information to Morningstar as well. But to make sure that we're comparing apples of apples, like for like from a risk point of view, you can have a little look and make sure you've not made a boo-boo there with the equity content, for example. But it will also kind of go into granularity of types of small, medium, large cap companies within the portfolios, style factors included. Things like regional breakdown. So a lot of the time, things always come out in the wash. If there is particular drag on performance, sometimes it might be due to an overweight of regions, etc. But also they're kind of, sector breakdown, as I mentioned already. Top 10 holdings, which is an interesting insight always. Top 10 bond issuers as well. And an idea of bond quality at the end, which again, you can pull this from the system as a report. You've got that for the file to put that in front of a client and almost give them a recommendation. But really appreciate obviously your time on the call there today. If obviously you do like what you see, I'd be more than happy off the back of this to kind of line up specific one-to-one conversations, continue conversations on with firms, answer any questions you might have. if you'd like to take a deeper dive into the financial planning tech, there's a nice way that you can do it for a trial for just £1. No obligation to obviously commit to anything off the back of that, but it's £1 for the first 30 days. If you were to do the financial planning tech in isolation, the cost is £135 plus VAT per month. You can cancel any time, as the heading says there. The alternative way of doing it is if you were to decide, actually, I'd like to take a look at your MPS proposition in a bit more detail in your portfolios, you actually get all the planning tech. If you commit a certain level of AUM, which is negotiable with us over a certain period of time, you get all the planning tech free as part of the package. So the way I always phrase it to people is you've got two options. You either buy the financial planning tech in isolation if you're comfortable with it, no obligation to use our MPS. If you do like the idea of using our MPS and you like what you see in that vein, this all comes free and you pay us in AUM, essentially. So those are essentially the two models we offer.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Just want to touch on, look, we asked the audience what their goals were, reducing time and scaling without adding a headcount. And then we touch on a piece of tech, which looks like it's seamless, it's integrated, could get a lot of people in a world of running a modern practice, essentially, which makes me want to ask, really, how many systems are people actually using? So just as one last question before we wrap today up, how many different tools and platforms does your firm currently use across planning, investing, and reporting? And look, in the chat as well, would something like this reduce your admin time? Could you see yourself scaling your business without adding headcount? Are you a believer of there is a product that can bridge that gap, or do you still firmly believe that you need a couple of different systems and softwares to facilitate your needs and your clients' needs? It's always an interesting one, isn't it? If people look at a product that does one, and product systems, platforms, something that is fully embedded, fully integrated, because we work with a number of firms that have that tech stack for their advisors. But then there's so many firms out there that are still sitting on 2 to 3, 4 or more. And there's one comment coming that they're just unsure, how many systems, and everybody, we speak to countless firms that have got a piece of tech, back office, cash flow modeling on their balance sheet. They're not even using it. It's a cost to their business that they don't even physically use. It's always an interesting one, isn't it? Let's be honest. So look, your results are there for people. It's a divide 2 to 3, 4 or more on the tech stack. So look, just want to, if there's any questions for Dan, please do fire away. Just wrap things up. We've hit the hour mark. Thank you all for joining us for another Club Live session. Do give us some feedback on the feedback form. Do let us know if you need some CPD certificates for today's session. Do come along to our future webinars as well with the likes of Bear Rock, FE Fund Info, and Way Trust. These are the next 3 webinars that we have lined up. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all have a great day.